I only used 2 Mirka sanders for a year. You won't believe what happened next. Hey, hope you're well. Oh. So that 12 months flew past. Yeah, almost exactly a year ago, just over actually. I put all my sanders away in a box or two, and I bought these 2 Mirka sanders, the Deros and the Deos, with the intention of using them exclusively for a long-term test, and just to be sure that there's no long-term benefit in kind clouding my judgment, I'll be giving these 2 sanders away. Details on how you get your name down for those later in the video. The long-term test was to kind of prove 2 points. I've theorized before in previous videos that the bulk of the sanding work that most people need to do could probably be done with just 2 sanders, a 6-inch or 150mm random orbital sander with a 5mm stroke, and a smaller orbital or palm sander with a smaller orbit of around 2 to 3mm. So to point 1, this was me putting my money where my mouth was and trying this theory out in practice by putting all my other sanders away and just using these 2 for a year. And that's literally me putting the money where my mouth was, because I already had examples of those sander types already: a Festool RTS 400 orbital sander and an ETS 155 random orbital. But I still went out and bought the Mirka sanders because the second point I was trying to prove to myself was around the reliability and longevity of the Mirka Deros in particular. Now, I've been fairly vocal in the past about my concerns with the Deros. There have been a number of high-profile YouTubers, Keith, Rangenbone Brown, Matt at Badger Workshop, Leo at the Hand iCraft channel are just 3 of the guys that I know in the public eye who've all had issues with their Deros sanders after really quite light use. I think Leo's takeaway quote was brilliant but brittle. When I did the video previously, the comments were split evenly between folks saying that I was an idiot and the Deros is the best sander they'd ever owned, and folks saying, yeah, that's exactly what happened to mine. Best sander ever until it just randomly stopped working. Now, as someone who makes content for a living, I'm fully aware of the appeal of jeopardy, drama and disaster. I only used 2 Mirka sanders for a year. You won't believe what happened next. Yeah, actually nothing much at all happened next. I've used both of these sanders over the last year on every project I've done for YouTube and for the Plus members at 10minuteworkshop.com, and for personal work at home. I've sanded birch ply for clamp racks. I've refinished the router bench when I changed lifts and motors. I made the Mondrian style patchwork table, the tracksaw picture frame, the drawer cabinet, all the plywood drawer boxes, the IKEA wall cabinets, the paintwork prep on the 30-year-old Billy bookcases from the home office remodel. More recently, the cabinets and raised panel doors, of course, and a lot of general decorating and paintwork prep too. Now we're back home and where the Deos in particular came into its own. And throughout all that time, the Deros and Deos have been really excellent, as they should be at these kind of prices. Let's not be coy. These are professional tools, with the street price for the Deros and Deos both currently in the neighbourhood of around £500, including that. That's a little over $600. A nice neighbourhood to be in, I'm sure. But no issues whatsoever with reliability, no problems at all with them that weren't of my own making, and we'll come back to those slight niggles in a minute. Let's just touch on the difference between orbital and random orbital, because I still get questions about this, and I know folks tend to use the terms interchangeably, and they are quite different. I've chatted about this before, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. Check out the previous videos if you want the full story. There's a Sanders playlist with everything in there. I'll link that up down below. But in short, an orbital sander is one where the sanding motion is circular. It literally moves in an orbit, and because of that it can generate a predictable scratch pattern, usually like little squiggly scratches like pigtails in the surface that you're sanding. The sanding pad is directly connected to the motor. With the sander switched off, it's a struggle to move the pad because you're trying to move the motor as well. With a random orbital sander, whilst it still has a circular orbit, the pad isn't fixed. You can move the sanding pad freely, and because it's allowed to move freely randomly, this helps to prevent those predictable scratch marks. By the way, because they're orbiting in a random way, random orbital sanders have a circular pad, whereas orbital sanders are mostly square or rectangular. Other shapes of sander, triangular detail sanders and delta sanders, for example, are mostly oscillating sanders, which is a different type altogether. And again, check out the previous videos if you want those kind of details. Let's just take a minute to look at the sanders that I haven't used for the last 12 months and open this box up for the first time. Okay, so there's a pair of RTS 400 orbital sanders. There's the ETS 155 random orbital. There's the Festool Rotex gear driven sander, 5-inch, and there's the 5-inch random orbital finishing sander. Most 5-inch random orbital sanders are a smaller stroke, by the way, smaller orbit, so they're intended more for finishing and denibbing between paint finishes and that kind of thing. And then there's the cheap Chinese Deros Alike knockoff that started this whole thing off. Be interesting to see how that fares, having been in lockup for 12 months. Out of all of those, the only one that I wished I could have had use of over the entire 12 months was just recently, and that was the Rotex, because in the home remodeling, some of the flooring edges needed a little bit of blending to smooth out the transitions between the boards before we laid some vinyl back down. The Deros did it, but I'm pretty sure the Rotex with some coarse grit abrasive would have been much quicker. But other than that, I haven't missed these at all. I've thinned the whole sander collection down a little bit since I did the which sander when video a little while back. There's no belt sander, there's no linear sander, and there's no detail sander either, but I barely use those. And to be honest, looking at these sanders here, yeah, I may well have another decision to make, another clear out to do before too long. So the Deros and the Deos have been close to perfect. No problems at all with reliability. Mirka seems to have dealt with that one. And just from my own personal experience with the comments that I've received, it does seem to be that the reliability issues all predate the current version of the Deros. That's the one with the addition of Bluetooth. I don't know this for a fact, but my understanding was that it's the older pre-Bluetooth version of the Deros that's the one that's now available as a Metabo SXE. I'm not aware of any major reliability concerns with that. I don't actually know anyone who has one of those. If you've got one, then let me know in the comments how you're getting on with it. Anyway, back to the Deros and the Deos. They've been really good. Great dust extraction. They're pleasant to use, quiet, low vibration, no tingly fingers with them after long sanding sessions, and they've been absolutely 100% reliable, so no issues at all on that score. But they're not flawless. The flaws are mostly purely personal things from me, just little niggles and irritations. But if you're spending this kind of coin on a sander, I don't think you should have to settle. Both the Deos and Deros are lightweight, but I found the Deos orbital sander quite jittery in use, even with the vacuum suction turned right down. It's just not an especially comfortable sander to use. I mentioned when I first looked at the Deros random orbital that while I'm a big fan of removable power cords, it's kind of beyond my comprehension why Mirka would change the pin layouts on an otherwise perfectly standard kettle lead. Yes, I'm sure the cynics are all rattling their keyboards to tell me it's so that Mirka can ask 40 quid for a replacement lead. But I can't believe that they sell enough replacement leads to make that worthwhile, so I assume there's a better reason. I just don't know what that might be. But the biggest pain in the wrist for me is just that for all the ergonomics, the rubbery grips, for all the quietness and smoothness, I simply don't find them very comfortable to use. And that's down to the issue that I had with them right at the start, the flappy paddle. Now, it's not the paddle actuator in itself that I have trouble with. I don't like it. I'd rather have a switch, but that's something else. It's that it forces you to hold the sander, to use the sander in a particular way, in a way that I just don't like to work. I said before, right in the first Deros video, that it felt to me like the sander was designed to be used vertically, like on a production line sanding car body parts or something. But I don't work that way, whether I'm working horizontally at the bench or vertically on a workpiece. I just want the sander on. And for me to be able to change my grip depending on what I'm sanding, and you just can't do that without cutting the power or changing the speed, because every time you change your grip, the paddle moves. Call me precious, but I don't think I should have to change the way I work to suit a particular tool. So as lovely as these two are, as flawless as the finish that they produce is, they're going to be moved on as planned in a simple giveaway. Both sanders are in great condition, barely run in to be honest, and I'm delighted to say that Mirka UK have agreed to transfer the remainder of the 3-year warranty to the new owners. Each sander comes complete in its original sustainer, and I'll be including whatever Abranet abrasives I have for each sander as well. With 2 sanders available, I'll be doing 2 giveaways, 1 for each, and putting your name down automatically puts you into both giveaways. My 10-minute workshop plus members will be familiar with the wheel of names, and to get your name down, then get yourself across to 10minuteworkshop.com and signed up as a plus member, where I'll be posting a link in the giveaways forum category in the next couple of days. The other way to get your name down is simply to sign up for the 10-minute workshop newsletter at 10minuteworkshop.email, and the link will go out in a special newsletter again very soon. The list's going to stay open until the end of this month, November 2023, and I'll pull the names out of the digital hat in early December and notify the lucky winners. But I'll call this one done for this week. Thanks so much for taking a look. Do get across and get your names down if you're interested in these 2 sanders, and I'll see you all again very soon. All right, take care.